All right. So we're about to head to the Oakland airport to take our flight to Tacoma to meet up with the expert guitar refinisher and restorer Joe Riggio. I'm going to be bringing him my Gibson R8 from 2013. And in essence, we're going to be treating this as a conversion project. The same way that you would convert an early Les Paul from the early 50s to a later 50s Les Paul as a common thing. We're going to be taking a contemporary reissue Les Paul and doing the exact same process and trying to make it as close as we can to that golden era of Les Pauls from the 58, 59 era. I'm anxious to see what Joe thinks of it as is and see what transpires over the next few days. Let's head to Tacoma. It was an early morning, having to get to the airport at 6 o'clock to arrive in Seattle at 7:30. It was a little brutal. Luckily, Joe was willing to meet us there and transport us down to Tacoma, and boy, he's just got an incredible home with some amazing vintage guitars and amplifiers. Just such a joy just to walk in there and be a kid in the candy store. All right, so purchased in Tall Toad Music in Petaluma, California.
When it was brand new?
Yes, brand new guitar, 2013. The pickups have been replaced.
Okay, they have.
With sonic pickups, and it's just kind of a PAF thing. It's kind of 8.6, something like 8.65 pounds, something like that. You know, not a bad weight. It was the best of the ones that they had there, and there was roughly about 20 that I played to kind of land on that one.
Nice, that's a good opportunity.
But yeah, it was kind of, you know, the Les Paul was a good example as far as, you know, what I could tell from what was available. I think subsequently I played some Murphys and some historic makeovers I thought were better than this. And then certainly, you know, then there's the real deal. But
right, yeah. But
I'm hoping that it's not too objectionable of a starting place for us. I want to, while we're here, is maybe determine a spot where we can record it acoustically, you know, with what we have brought with us, so that we can do a before and after on that metric as well. Is how does it sound acoustically in the room? So like we'll put the mic in the same position somewhere in this room. We'll determine what that is, and when we finish, we'll get it in the same place again.
Okay.
So we have an A and B of that as well.
So we need to do that right away because we're going to take this baby apart and get it stripped right away.
Let's see if we can get a good take now. Here you go. So guitars on the bench.
Yeah, let's take everything off of this thing and get it down to just wood and finish. Where I watch all the Vertex videos. These are the famous self-destructing knobs. Yeah, they did away with these. There they are, original.
So original.
Yeah, those are the CTS.
These are the ones that you would say to
my
use.
personal favorite. Yeah.
I like seeing somebody else behind the soldering iron for a change.
You do a lot of soldering, I'm sure.
Not that much anymore. So all the tonewood deniers, what do you think is missing from their evaluation when they do these tests and they say, well, you could have acrylic or concrete Les
maybe
Paul.
They're just not hearing it. It may just be like an innate. You know what I mean? I don't mean that as a slam. I'm just like I don't know how else to explain it.
So we should get them a get well soon card.
Exactly.
I hope you recover your hearing.
Sorry, you're wrong. Oh. No, it's all subjective territory, you know, for what you want to hear. But I think generally speaking, we want our Les Pauls to be lively and on the brighter side, because that can be taken away at the amp or pedal or wherever your processing is. It's just when you try to add that, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, let's get
It's a little lighter now.
Yeah. Joe outsources all of his stripping to one of his good friends, Clyde, that lives locally there in the Seattle-Tacoma area. And he's a vintage guitar freak, just like the rest of us, and has developed some techniques to really get these guitars stripped quickly. We basically had a 6-hour turnaround for him from the time that we dropped off to the time that we needed to pick up and then resume the rest of the refinish project just because of the limited number of days that we were there.
Now we're going to come right back to the pickup of the guitar after being chemical stripped by Clyde. But before we do, I want to tell you about a piece of gear that I've been incredibly impressed with. It's the Nano Cortex by Neural DSP, basically the little brother of the Quad Cortex. And it has many of the same functionalities, which includes being able to capture your own amps and being able to utilize them literally anywhere. I'm sitting in an airport here on my way to see Joe, and I could literally play my favorite amps with my guitar right there with just a guitar cable and headphones. Also, with the launch of the newest OS, you get a bunch of new features, including new EQs, new utility pedals, 8 new compressors, 4 new wahs, 2 new filters, 9 guitar overdrive effects, 6 new modulation pedals, 5 delays, 5 new reverbs. Also, for our viewers, an exclusive discount code on all Neural DSP plugins, 30% off any plugin on the Neural DSP website that are 90 days or older are eligible for 30% off using the coupon code VERTEX, VERTEX, at checkout. Now let's get back to the video and pick up this guitar from Clyde.
So approximately 5 to 6 hours later, we met back up with Clyde and picked up the guitar after being chemical stripped. A lot of stuff came off this. It was pretty impressive to see. Clyde gave us a little sample that I'll show you here on camera that looks pretty gnarly.
Believe it or not, that guitar probably had 1/8 of an inch of this crap on there.
Really?
Yeah, that's probably from just one scraping like that.
I'm just glad to get this back in Joe's hands so we can start to finish the guitar and get into that part of the process now that everything's been fully chemically stripped. And we're just going to do all the prep and get it ready for paint.
We got it back from being chemical stripped, so it's pretty much down to the wood, but not completely. When it gets chemical stripped, there's just always some residue left because you're basically turning finish into a stain. And yes, you're taking it off, but just like stain, when you wipe it on and wipe it off, it leaves something behind. So that's what we're seeing, or we see some color here still. The biggest surprise on this one, this is a 2012, we believe. This yellow was actually stained onto the bare wood. So this has been completely chemical stained down to the bare wood, yet there's all this yellow still here, where I would normally spray this yellow coat. And I haven't stripped enough 2012s to know if that was just something they were doing at the time, probably so. But I did a little test here. It's gonna sand clean, so it's not too terribly deep, which is good. So we'll get a nice clean slate, do it the way we want to do it with the sprayed yellow, sunburst over that. And then same with this. So I'm gonna sand past some of this red, even though we're gonna be putting red back on it. We want to do it so we know what's going on there. We get the results we want.
When Joe and I were talking about vintage Les Pauls, one thing he said is that a lot of the reissues, including R8s like mine, tend to have a little bit bigger necks than what you would have found on an ordinary vintage guitar. So I did ask that he return mine to kind of what would be a more stock shape and kind of using his 1958 as a reference. He also recarved the top because one of the things on mine that's consistent with a lot of reissues is that they don't have that kind of dome-like carve that you would find on a vintage one, and they kind of almost have more of just a radius as opposed to really having that carved top. So Joe was very careful to make sure that mine matched those very same vintage specs that you would expect on a 58 or a 59 that was coming out of the factory back then.
Yeah, I'm liking it now. Yeah, see how it's deeper on this side than over here? Like I said, we get the 3D effect back instead of where the staining accentuates the stripes in 2-dimension, but to my eye, it always made the 3-dimensional part go away. The thing with this method is you got to keep it moving constantly. You got to be feathering your work, back and forth. And this will dig an unsightly ditch pretty quickly. There's no go back. So the back edge radius on this guitar was a little bit too large of a radius, a little too soft, like overly rounded. So what we're able to do, since we're squaring this up a little bit, it's allowing us to sharpen that up. So it kind of automatically is getting corrected a little bit. We are just throwing back the sanding sealer so that after we put the pore filler on, so the sealer stops the pore filler from staining the wood too much. It still allows some staining. That's where the red color will come from. But sanding it back a little bit now so that when the pore filler is dry, it's ready to be finished.
After a quick kind of hand check of where the neck was after a little bit of sanding, I decided to have Joe go a little bit further. Again, really trying to use his 1958 original Les Paul as the reference to just get a really comfortable feel. As a Strat player, I always want to not feel like I'm making too big of a jump in terms of neck sizes when I go to a Gibson style guitar. So just trying to get a little bit closer feel to that. And in addition to that, Joe decided that it was the right time to start getting the back prepped, that we were going to start adding some color to the back and some of that grain filler and starting to add some of that red color that so many of those late 50s Gibsons are known for. So getting the front all taped off so we don't accidentally stain any of that maple top, and then just applying that, and it's really starting to take shape as the guitar that we hope it will be.
All right.
All right.
Let's have a look-see after.
Day two.
Looking pretty good in red.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll cut this back a little bit and determine whether we want to add any more red or just go with the faded thing like we've been talking about.
You were saying that the determining factor, if you could reiterate for the good people, was if we go too dark here and we have a lighter color, it
Yeah, I
can
just
kind of look
feel like that feels
unnatural.
mismatched. Yeah, like not true to what would happen on a guitar that got really faded out.
Got it. So we're just trying to assess the authenticity of the back relative to what we're going to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what's the next step?
So the next step will be, let's just sand this back a little bit, and you can kind of see there's a haze of red from the pore filler.
Yep.
Still sitting on the surface, and we're going to get rid of most of that, but some of it will definitely stay, and that's what becomes the red.
Okay.
The look of the red. Even if we leave it fully faded, it looks quite red. I mean, you remember what this looked like yesterday?
Yeah.
With that real light colored mahogany.
Yeah.
You know, we're definitely in the red zone now. Okay. So this is kind of inevitable too, like as I'm doing this step, because the corners get, so easy to sand through. Like this will all end up being aged area. So where right now it looks like, oh no, you sanded through the red. Yeah. By the time the product is finished, there'll be a bunch of chips here. And
And also, like on those finishes, it would wear through in certain spots too, right?
Yeah.
Or you have like darker spots than others, yeah.
Yep. Another effect that this technique will give, like the old ones do, is that bleeding. So the red pigment that's now in the pores, as you put clear over this, it comes out. If you look at my 58, like by now it's 2 years old almost. It's definitely, it starts to do it right away, but it does continue even after it's dry.
Nice.
So all this excess red, you see on the binding will go away when we do the scraping. After any color we're going to put on, whether it be the burst or if we decide to put any more cherry red on the back of here, which it looks like we're not going to, but if we did, the Gibson, so all this cream colored binding is stained red from the pore filler. The pore filler is so densely pigmented that it just can't help but make everything red. So that gets scraped away once all the color is on. That's the old Gibson technique. You can tape it off and kind of save that step, but we're going for the authentic thing here, which is the scraping, which leaves that little line. That's all part of just the authentic look. Up here, this is all going to be painted black. So I'll do a little quick sand, but we don't need to get rid of that red. It's all going to be black. So this is a good example of what the amber clear coats are for.
That's the Coca-Cola stuff you're showing us.
I was just showing you, it looks like when it's concentrated in a cup, it's really dark.
Yeah.
But when you just spray a pass or two or three, you get this yellowing effect, which is, it's imitating clear lacquer that has yellowed over time, which is what we're used to seeing on vintage guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what that yellowing does a lot, obviously it makes anything that's white or whitish yellowed, like we're used to seeing, but it also blends colors together like the Sunburst is going to be comprised of 2 colors, the lemon that we're about to spray,
which is this color that you
middle, goes over the whole thing.
Right.
But then the shading, the actual Sunburst, goes over that, and it looks pretty good. And you've got to spray that in such a way that you get a nice gradation between the 2 colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we finish off with clear without any tint in it, so that when that's dry, you can sand and polish, have something to sand and polish.
Right. So it kind of gives you that margin.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Without removing the yellow you just put on.
Right.
So I'm creating that yellow lemon step of the Gibson Sunburst, which is different, much different than a Fender yellow in the middle of a 2-tone or a 3-tone. That's actually a more opaque product when you mix it. Not fully opaque like yellow paint, but this is very clear. Like when you see this mixed up, it's really clear. That's it. So you can see how that's different than the stained yellow that we took off that was right on the wood. That, like we said, kind of took away the 3D effect. This retains all the movement of that flame in the maple, because it's transparent and it's sitting on top, as opposed to being soaked into the grain. Again, like, a more authentic look. So I'm going to demonstrate the scraping of the binding. As you can see, there's lots of red now, especially that we added the red spray.
Yep.
The candy red. It went right over the binding, so it doesn't really make the job any more difficult. You still have to do the same scrape, but probably best to demonstrate it on the top. So
yeah. Well, gosh, the color really just seems like it's even getting richer.
Yeah.
By the moment.
Yeah. When the amber goes on, that's the moment. So,
yeah.
That's really fun. But
all right, so scraping the binding.
Scraping
So
the binding.
This is a Gibson technique.
It is, yeah. In fact, I use this scraper that I got from a kind lady at the Gibson Custom Shop.
Awesome.
I'll commonly use a box knife blade. That's what I used for years, but she set me up with stuff that they use, and it does work.
All right.
Nicer. So as you can see, same thing on the top. So no red on the top binding, but the color that we used for the faded burst is over the binding on the top. So for demonstration purposes, I think that's the best place to show you. Like, it's also the easiest. As you can see, it's kind of like single stroke and you're there. It just depends on how much you want to reveal. That varies too on the old ones, Sometimes you'll see it real wide, sometimes thin, a little uneven even. So that's kind of how the top goes. I would just continue to do that whole thing. You can see it's exposed.
So you're just going to be doing that all the way around?
All the way around. And then the same here. Same here. A little tricky here because of the frets. So you can't, here, as you'll see, we'll demonstrate this first. So I don't know if it just did, but we got to go this whole 1/4 inch of the binding. So I'm going to do it in little stages. So I'm using my thumb against the top to guide a nice, controlled, so I don't cut into this area. So that becomes a challenge here. And kind of the trick for that is to use, in that way. We'll create it that way. So that is binding scraping, and but it's a pretty intense focus because you can screw it up really fast.
Yeah. So we're going to be gone for a few weeks.
Yep.
And we're going to come back in the middle of next month.
Yep.
So between now and then, what are going to be the things that are going to occur that maybe you'll send us some video or photos of progress that we can put into the video?
I'll send you an image of the binding completely scraped, so what we just did, but all the way around, up and down. And the next step before I can do top coats is we got to paint the headstock black.
Yeah. And do you have to mask that Gibson logo, or how do you? Okay.
Yeah. So I just masked that with some automotive masking tape. You know, there's plenty of room to mask. You know, I'm not masking around every little curve of the letter. We have all this leeway.
Got it.
Black against black equals black. So the eye sees it all continuous.
Yeah.
It appears as though the inlay is in this giant bed of black. It's really not.
Yeah.
The serial number will then go on.
So we're going to reapply the original serial number.
Yeah, and then in the old style font, which is similar but a little different. That goes on before any clear, but over the color, which now we have all the color. We're not going to add any more color other than the ambered top coats, which does change the color, but the serial number goes under all that.
And is there any more sanding that will occur at this point?
The only other sanding will be the very last round of clear. The very last one, I'll sand back before I apply that.
Okay.
Just to have as flat a surface as possible. But that'll all, once the clear starts to go on, that all goes on the same day.
Okay.
Basically. I like that all to go on at once. It's just kind of part of my process and affects the aging and a lot of that stuff. So that's the only major like sanding like we've seen already that will happen. And then after the final coat dries, I'll sand it, fine sand it, and buff it.
Okay.
Sand all the orange peel off of it, because right off the gun, even though I will have sanded just before putting the final on, it won't be glass flat.
Yeah.
There'll be some orange peel. So sand that away, polish it. Again, it won't be polished like a brand new polyurethane guitar where it looks like, it feels like glass. It's not the look, you know, that the old guitars were done in. So I have a specific grits and polishing techniques to make that happen. And that'll be it. That'll be as if it were new, and then the aging.
Then you'll do your aging.
Yeah.
All right. And we're going for a fairly heavy look.
We're going to go a little heavy.
Yeah. And
love it.
Yeah. So that way we don't have any concern when I get it back home and I got a 2-year-old get banged up and it
You won't even notice.
No, nobody will notice. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Joe, thank you so much for hosting us this week. And
thanks for having
me.
me.
And man, it's been a beautiful experience to watch you in your element.
It's great to have you guys here.
And hosting us these last few days. So I'm anxious to come back. And at that point, will there be any other things to do when we come back, or literally just be picking it up?
I'm gonna hand you something that's, you know, much different than it looks right now. It'll be fun for you to see the finished product.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna withhold until the last second so you can get a true reaction.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
See you guys in a few weeks. This is the reveal. All right, here it is. Woo, man!
Look at that.
What?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm super happy with it. I love the piece of wood we're working with. This is a great guitar, Gary Bones, so perfect candidate for what we did.
Yeah, can you pick up the guitar, Joe, and kind of walk us through like some of the things that are changed between?
Yeah, so we can start up here. So the original truss rod covers are real good, so we kept that. You know, just to start off, the whole guitar, as you remember, is refinished.
Yeah.
So we took it all the way down to the wood. So everything from the silk screen to the black to the cherry color, the sunburst, everything is new. Much more in the old style. So got the Kluson tuners. I aged the buttons, aged the tuners as well. So they're the Kluson branded.
And
they're modern.
you took my original serial number and then redid it
Exactly.
as vintage style?
Yep.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Working our way down. This is a new old stock nylon net from the 50s. So the same exact material used by Gibson, Harmony, and some other brands, but it's the real stuff. It's much harder than the new nylon that most people are using. So It carves up a lot like bone. It has a really great tonality. Let's see, working our way down. New part, switch tip, a Catalan reproduction switch tip. The real butyrate rings.
Ooh.
That they're the proper color, and you can dig your fingernail in them. And
It's just a soft enough plastic where you can.
Mm-hmm. And they're the real stuff. They smell like stinky cheese in the plastic bag.
So you got the blue cheese rings.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the Mojo Axe pickguard that's cut to fit historic guitars like yours, from Dan at Mojo Axe, and he expedited this for us too. Worth mentioning.
Oh, shout out.
Yeah, and he carves it to look much more like the 50s. So you have that space right here that's indicative of the original burst. So they almost always have that.
You gotta have the space.
Yeah, and again, just a better color and the slightly off color between the rings and the pickguard is really great. Original tailpiece and bridge, and then these are the more correct knobs that Gibson would call the true historic knobs.
And take us through like some of the aging process here, because sometimes there's like a overdoneness. Like this just looks so classy, like all the way around. So take us through like some of the things that you added. Like,
well, it starts with the way that I polish the finish. So it starts off as a brand new finish. So if I didn't do any proper or further aging, it would be just like a brand new guitar when I'm done sanding and polishing the final coats, which was about, I generally do it 4 or 5 days later after the final coats that you saw put on. So the checking is kind of the first thing to happen. Maybe tough to catch at the camera.
Yeah, it might be tough. We'll get some glamour shots that we can really cut in, but I can definitely see like where you simulated the pick marks, like kind of the downstroke coming in.
Yeah.
And like that's
It's a typical thing.
Yeah, and I love just like a little bit of arm rash here so that I can add in my own. I love what I was seeing on the back, like with the buckle rash.
Yeah. Couple different spots, a little bit here, a little bit here. 2 different owners.
Yeah. And the thing that the pièce de résistance here, in addition to the beautiful, just like right on the edge there, is how you had talked about that I would get it later, where you were not spraying as dark on the red on the neck.
Yeah.
And so there's like this offset between how it's like this dark cherry and then it gets into this light where the back of the neck is. Like that looks so cool and authentic.
Yeah, very authentic looking.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm anxious for you to get your hands on it so you kind of feel just the tactile difference between what you're more used to how it was before.
Right. A little bit, yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to pass it over to Corey, and let's see. Well, I know we took some weight away because we had done the carve.
To me, accentuate the carve just a bit.
Yeah, and we took down the neck also a little slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, it's so comfortable already. I mean, just it's so resonant. When I just did that, it's almost like it's tickling me.
Right.
It's like it's unbelievably.
More movement for sure.
We're definitely, I mean, we're going to do the acoustic test here, but I love the checking. It's not the razor blade checking. It's not the razor blade checking. And you redid the logo too, right?
Yep, the Les Paul model gold silk screen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on the originals, you said that the sizing is a little bit different than what it would have been originally.
What they're doing now is a little different.
And then spacing wise, is it in the wrong location or is it?
There's no exact location.
Okay.
From the that can move a little bit, but yeah, it's in the general area where most of them were.
Wow. And as a consequence of the refinish, I presume that it's just going to get more checked and.
Yeah, the checking will continue to what I call pucker, and that is, where the cracks start to kind of move into each other, and you can see it at more angles.
It's still going.
Definitely have a lot of sustain.
Well, I even love how you aged the the rhythm and treble.
Yeah.
And even the binding and everything like that, it's just like everything is so perfect and scraped, not taped or not taped off.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should do the acoustic test. I was sitting right there. We've marked where we had the mic before. I want to see what happens here. I mean, just feeling the feedback loop between like where it's like resonating against my body and my leg. I mean, I'm not kidding. Like it almost feels like a low grade electrolysis is like happening. Yeah. It's like so resonant, but it does feel appreciably lighter than it did. But Joe, this is just so gorgeous, man. Like you're such a craftsman. You get it, man. And it's just, this is such a work of art. There are not enough of you guys. You guys are the Picassos, the Monets of the game. And I'm just so grateful that you agreed to do this.
I'm grateful that you chose me.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no other choice.
Well, that's sweet of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well, as you can see, I'm back home. I've got the guitar here, and it is every bit as amazing as it was the first moment I saw it in Joe's workshop. It went from being a good guitar to my best guitar, and everything about the details of it are just unmatched. I can't thank Joe enough for all of his attention to detail. This was a multi-month process between the very first visit that we made to him in Tacoma, to the pickup, all the email exchanges, and just attention to detail in between. I can see why he's the first call guy for all of the vintage shops and vintage dealers across the country, because he's just a wonderful person to work with and really knows his stuff. I thought this guitar could get better, but I didn't think by this margin. It is a completely different guitar, plays and sounds completely different than it had, and just its ability to sustain, to optimize everything that's going on with my hands and transmit that through the pickups and the amplifier is just uncanny. And I own a ton of guitars, and for this to stand that far above the rest of them, I think is really indicative of the work that Joe does. So shout out to Joe, and man, just what a craftsman, what an artist, and I just couldn't be happier.